welcome back to another video, this time on reflected ceiling plans. So quickly, RCP stands for Reflected Ceiling Plan, and this is simply just a plan of our ceiling. And the reason it's called reflected is so envision if we were looking down and we're looking at the floor and the floor had a mirror on it. It's just a reflection of what we see on the ceiling. I just like to think of it as a ceiling plan, but reflected ceiling plan is the correct term here. And just a few things that we show on a reflected ceiling plan is we show all the different light fixtures. So this right here is a light fixture. We show a tag right here that corresponds to a schedule up here. Okay, and then we also, it depends on the architect, but some architects like to dimension the lights as well. Some may or may not dimension the location of the mechanical equipment. That's again up to the purpose and the contract and the scope of what the architect or interior designer of what they were hired to do. But so we dimension all of those items. Keep in mind, we do not dimension the studs here. We dimension to the stud with our dimensions like this right here. Of course, we always dimension to the stud, but we're not dimensioning all of these studs again. We already have that information on our dimensioned floor plan. And then a few other things that we're showing, and I'll go up to my legend here, is we do the supply. So this is the air supply that comes from our HVAC system, the return, which allows us to get fresh air into the building. And then here we have our light switches. This is a dimmer. This is a three-way light switch. So that means, for example, that it can be turned off from different locations. So, and I'll explain this right now. So I have this S3 right here. And you can see I have all of these little dotted lines. So everything right here is on the same wire. And so if I were to flip this switch, this money sign here represents a light switch. If I were to flip that switch, all of those lights would turn on. And when I have a 3 on it, that means that, hey, I have another light switch. So I have two options of where to turn that on or off. So an individual could turn this string of lights here on or off here, and also on or off here. And then this one right here without anything on it, that just means on and off. That's it. It just means, hey, this is wired, a concealed wire. And then over here, I have D for dim. It's upside down. But that just means it's a dimmer. It's like a little knob or a scroll or something to dim the lights. And then I also have a smoke alarm. Exit sign, exhaust fan. For example, in a restroom, that's nice to keep things from stinking, keeping it fresh. So just a few things. There are quite a bit of extra credit on this module. Everything shown in green is extra credit, so you're welcome to do that. I would prefer that you do all of that. If you're going to attempt it, go ahead, try your best. And I have different videos on these elements if you need them. But a few things I want to walk you through are when we are creating this and putting this on a sheet, that's nothing new. We did that all of last week. So if you need a refresher, please make sure to go back to our prior video and watch that. I walk you through that step by step. And finally, you may be thinking, oh, I can just go up to my working view and right-click, duplicate. Actually, no. And the reason for that is because reflected ceiling plans, their cut plane is a little different. So we actually want to program Revit to tell us or to give us a new one. And to do that, all we go up to is we'll go up to View on top. All right. So I hit View, Plan View. Then I'm going to hit Reflected Ceiling Plan here. Okay. And then I already have them. That's why they're not showing up. But you can uncheck this if yours aren't showing up. And then you can make a first floor reflected ceiling plan, okay, and then second floor. So please make sure to do that. Again, that's underneath View, and then View, Plan View, Reflected Ceiling Plan. So make sure to do that before dragging them on your view. And please remember, if you need to, please go ahead and review the crop region information on last week's videos. Super helpful. All of that applies here. So we're actually... there's not many new skills this week aside from ceiling, so you're actually repeating a lot of what we've learned so far in this semester. And then one thing I want to teach you is let's go ahead and let's develop your architectural reflected ceiling plan view template. So if you remember, if I click on my drawing once and I come down to my properties tab over here and I scroll down, I have what's called a view template. And here I have architectural reflected ceiling plan. So go ahead and grab that one. If you don't have that one, go ahead and simply hit copy any of these, and name it that, please. And going forward, please go ahead to pause the screen. I'll give you a few seconds and make sure that all of your settings match, particularly scale and detail level. Okay, so now that we're done with that, let's click on VG, which stands for Visibility and Graphics Overrides Model. And let's make sure that we have some of the same items on here, okay? So I'll go over what's unchecked. So I have doors unchecked, entourage unchecked, furniture unchecked, mass unchecked, nurse call devices, parking and parts unchecked, planting unchecked, site unchecked, structural framing, and topography also unchecked. And then up on top, underneath annotation categories, let's take a look. I have door tags unchecked, elevations unchecked, reference lines and reference planes unchecked, scope boxes, section boxes, and sections unchecked, and wall sweep tags unchecked. Okay, and then the last thing I want to go over with you on here is please make sure you're following along here. Underneath view range, click edit, and we're going to change our cut plane to 4 feet. So we're literally cutting our building 4 feet above finished floor, okay, and we're looking up. All right, that's how it works for these kinds of views. And the reason we're cutting it so low is because we want to see our light switches. And if I were to cut that a little higher, I wouldn't see my light switches. And it's really common to have the light switches shown on a reflected ceiling plan because it goes hand in hand with how the lights are laid out. So I'd still like you to do this, even if you aren't doing the light switches, as those are extra credit, because it will be good for your brain to kind of figure out how this works. And then in addition, you may see, hey, there's a lot of things that are popping up still. Like, for example, you may not have cupboards yet, but if there's things that are popping up that you don't necessarily want to show that aren't matching my example here, just simply right click them, and then we'll go to element. Okay, so just 1 second, or sorry, we'll go to hide in view elements. All right, so one more time, if we're hiding something that we don't need, I'll pretend to hide this. It's just right click, hide in view elements. Okay, and so you can do that. So a few other things. So now that we covered what an RCP is, how to create a new RCP view, how to set up our view template, let me show you how to add ceilings. All right, so the ceilings I have here, they're all one piece. So I'm tabbing through here to just select the different elements I have going on to see if I can get a hold of the edge of that ceiling. So there we go. And so I have my ceiling here. It's called compound ceiling, 5/8 chip board. Let's just see what other options we have. All right, so if you don't have any of these options, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and create a new one. And what you can do is you can duplicate this one right here, for example. And then you can come in here, edit under structure, and then delete your structure here and just do gypsum wallboard. Okay, and so we're having all of these ceilings at 9/6. And the reason we're doing that is so we have a little wiggle room for us to fit in all of our lighting, mechanical equipment, ducts, diffuser, all of that. And so to actually model the ceiling, what I'll do is I'll go up to Architecture, Ceiling, and you're welcome to use the feature here that's called Automatic Sketch. We don't need to be too picky here about the borders it goes to and if it goes to the studs. We actually only really care about that when we're doing dimensioning. Okay, this right here we don't care too much about, but one thing that I want you to do is we only want one ceiling per room. Do you see here how for example, this includes 3 rooms? We don't want that. So I'd prefer that you sketch out each room. Okay, so you can just go ahead, skirt around everything. And then I left you information on what a soffit is on Canvas. So go ahead and check that out on our annotated plan. It's essentially a little wall that goes from the top of the cabinet all the way to the ceiling, and it gets rid of that kind of dust collection area where all the dust bunnies settle. And I have pretty specific examples on Canvas that walk you through that on my annotated plan. I just have it in words written. So go ahead and do that. Do not worry about cabinets yet. And then I would simply hit finish. Okay. And then I'm going to discard that as I already have that. And then one other thing is I want to double check my ceiling height. And so you can see 9.6, beautiful. And then make sure room bounding's checked. And then one other thing too, do you notice when I tab through here, it gives me different elements? Keep practicing this. This is pretty tricky in Revit, okay? So tab, click, tab, click, tab, click, tab, click. Revit is notorious for not letting you necessarily select what you want right away. So just be patient with the tab click process and it will come naturally. And then a few other important things here is that you'll need to put in all the light fixtures. And all of these light fixtures you'll have to download utilizing the same process that we did last week from Autodesk. And to do that, we simply go up to Insert, Load Autodesk Family. Okay? And I have all of the names here for all of your families nice and neat. All right? So it should be very straightforward here. And one thing I want to mention is that if something is not showing up correctly, what I'd like you to do is click on the item. Okay, for example, this light here. And then do you see where it says level constraints? Make sure it matches the level you're on. And then hit pick new host. And you should be able to hover it over your ceiling and it should click on there. So all these items should click onto the ceiling. If any issues pop up, please go ahead and shoot me a message. I have tons of good extra credit on here if you need anything. This will give you a lot to chew on this week, especially if you're looking for a challenge. But if you just do the simple route, nothing wrong with that. I totally appreciate that. But let me know if you have any questions moving forward. And then a few things when we dimension is that we always, always, always go to the stud. Okay? Always. And so by that, I mean all of our dimensions, when they clip to a wall, we're going to the stud. So turn off your thin lines up here if needed. And look, if I were to pull this all the way down, you'd see that it hits the stud, like right there. Okay, oops, I moved that. And then you can see match all of these dimensions here. And as a friendly reminder, if I have multiple elements that say equal, all I do here is I hit dimension, and then I'll tab to my stud, hit the light, then tab to my stud, and then hit equal. Okay, and for example, if you have something that has equal within it, like this for example, do this one first, okay? Then add a separate dimension here and here. So you'll have to Frankenstein or piecemeal that one together. And so always start with the equal, okay? It shouldn't move either end. Just plop all three down. Make sure this one's in the right location first, and same with that one. So you may have to place this dimension down first, delete it. Place this dimension down first, delete it, then do your equal, then bring those dimensions back. It takes a little bit of playing with, so find out what works best for you. It will take a minute to get a hold of, and there are multiple ways to do this. So that is one method. Another method too is if you would like, you could do it all in one go, but I do not recommend that as that can be very difficult for new learners, and it's just easiest to separate your equal and your dimension strings, okay? So if you notice how all of this is one dimension string, just a reminder, for equal, we want to make sure that those are always independent. Otherwise, we'll run into trouble with coordinating that with a long dimension string. Okay. And then finally, tagging light fixtures. We've been doing this all semester, just not light fixtures yet. But I hit T, G on my keyboard, T as in Tom, G as in Gerald. And I go ahead and click my light fixture. And then what I'd like you to do is match the label I have here. And you can simply click into the label, just like this, and you can edit that as needed. Okay? Make sure to rewatch this as many times as you need to, and as always, please shoot me a message if you need anything. And a few tips: screenshots are very helpful. Sending your model is also even more helpful. And if you'd like, sending a short video from your phone explaining what's going on with your screen is also helpful as well. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.